Hey loves, my name is Amber, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to be discussing The Lighthouse by Christopher Parker. As a brief disclaimer, I did want to note that while this video is not monetarily sponsored in any way, I did receive my copy of the book from Books Forward in order to review and feature on my social channels. Before we get too far into the review, I did want to mention a few trigger warnings that are involved in the book, including substance abuse, discussion of detective cases, and death in several different forms. So if you're particularly sensitive to any of these kinds of topics, please have extreme discretion while watching the rest of this review or reading the book. The book features a father and daughter who are left devastated just weeks after the accidental death of the family's matriarch. Kevin, detective of the Oregon Police Department, is given a menial job upon his return to work that requires a trip to the small seaside town of Seabrook. Not wanting to leave Amy by herself, they embark on the 3-hour road trip to the small Oregon town. Left to her own devices, Amy meets Ryan, a young Seabrook local who's buried in debt and obligation to his ailing father and his family's ranch, which is just days away from being repossessed by the bank. After a rocky meeting, Amy resolves to apologize to Ryan for a misunderstanding, and they embark on a lovely day together, permeated with stories of the town's allegedly haunted lighthouse and its seemingly impossible lighting. As the day progresses, things get weirder and weirder, until Amy makes a discovery that throws both of their lives upside down. However, that is about all I can say without going into too much detail on the specifics of the book and potentially spoiling some of the mysteries and twists of the novel. But it does definitely get so much more interesting from there, and so many thoughts and feelings about this book. We'll get into them. The Lighthouse is Christopher Parker's debut novel, however, it is so well written that you would have absolutely no idea. Other than the fact that it did take the first couple of chapters before I personally really got interested and invested, the rest of the book, A+, very well written. I have many thoughts that we will discuss, but you would have no idea that this author wasn't very experienced, and I'm genuinely a little bit disappointed that he doesn't have any other work that I can go and back read now. I have to actually wait to see if he's gonna ever release any more novels. That part I'm not a fan of, but I will definitely be reading anything that he comes out with in the future. About the halfway point of the novel, I was definitely hooked on a binge and definitely proceeded to finish the latter half of the book and an all-nighter that I pulled just because it got so interesting and psychological, and I just had to see what happens. And I cannot tell you the last time that I was this emotionally invested in a book and this desperate and curious to see how a book ends. I almost forgot what that feeling was like. So I was genuinely thrilled to have been able to read this book and get a taste of that feeling again. You know, within the first half of the book, we definitely get a little bit of character background and we get character interactions with each other that are just so genuinely cute and wholesome and adorable that you're definitely rooting for the two young ones. And you can't help but actually care about the heroines of the story. And then the latter half of the novel turns into more of this paranormal mystery, and quite frankly, it turns into a bit of a psychological mindfuck that you just get so wrapped up and invested in that you have to keep reading so you can figure out what happens next. It is definitely kind of 1408 style psychological mindfuck if you happen to be familiar with that film at all. I don't know how much the short story relates, so I don't know if that applies if you've read the short story or not, but it's whatever. Yeah, it is so psychological and you're left wondering what the fuck at several points, and you just have to continue reading to be able to figure out and develop what exactly is going on. And for the most part, it is built and written very well, with the exception of a little bit of cheese thrown in, but it definitely wasn't unwelcome, especially with how wholesome and cute the beginning of the novel was. You definitely needed a little bit of that in the latter half because things got very emotionally heavy at a lot of different points. I genuinely sobbed at several different points throughout the book. So if you want to read it for yourself, definitely be prepared to get emotionally invested. Because I'm not even somebody who happens to cry very often at books. You know what, actually, the more I'm thinking about it, there are actually quite a few books that I have cried at, but it's been quite a long time, and I feel like it's not particularly often. Like, it's definitely just those very heavy-hitting, hard emotional ones, but like the average one does not. So the fact that this one got me to not only cry, but sob was quite impressive. Like, it was certainly book hangover worthy. Like, to the point where I actually had to take a day or two after finishing this before I was able to start my next read, because I was just processing and still so wrapped up in this particular book that I didn't necessarily like want to let it go. And I was very, very disappointed when it came to an end, because I was just like, I want to just continue reading this. And again, cannot tell you the last time that I felt that way. I will admit that there are definitely bits of the story that feel like very technically written, you know, like not in a way where it's pretentious in any way. You can just obviously tell that the author is educated and uses, you know, nice eloquent wording for things. And especially when it comes to the dialogue, some of it does feel a little bit more formal than naturally occurring, but not in a way to where it takes you out of the reading at all. It does feel very fitting, especially for a select few of the characters, but it is very, very easy to visualize, you know, so like it's not like it's so technical that like you're left trying to visualize it for yourself. Like, it is just very, very easy, does it for you. I don't know if any of y'all experience this, but like personally, when I'm reading things, like there are a lot of books where it's like I can visualize it, but I have to actively encourage and force myself to visualize it. And then there are some books where I'm able to just read and it feels like I'm watching a movie. And it's been quite a while since I have felt the latter, but this was definitely one of those. So, A+ reading experience. Definitely very, very easy to read, easy to visualize. It was pretty quick to get through. It's not a particularly long novel. Like, it took me a couple of days to read, but like it took me a couple of days to read while like working and living and like having a normal schedule instead of just binging it. And then like the latter half I was able to binge it in like a few hours and just like an all-nighter. Like, this book is definitely one that I will absolutely be reading again. And it is a little bit too soon to say just because I am like so enthusiastic and hyped about it right now. I don't want to get too into deep, but like I could see it becoming like one of my new favorites that I read again and again. We'll have to see, because it was definitely heavy and I don't know how much appeal it's going to have upon multiple readings. I definitely think it'll be fun to read at least a second time to be able to get all of the clues that you missed because you weren't aware that you were going into like a psychological kind of thriller. So it'll definitely be fun for at least a second read, but I could definitely see myself picking it up every couple of years to just experiencing it again. And honestly, I desperately want Netflix to pick it up. And I do have a thing where like a lot of the time if I say something would do well as a TV show, it's one of my ways of saying, well, sometimes I genuinely mean it, like, oh, I enjoyed this book so much that I really want to see another adaptation of it. And then sometimes I'm like, it kind of missed as a book, but like I could see it doing well in a different format, such as a TV show. This one is definitely the former. Like, I am so invested in this storyline that I definitely want to see more content for it, and I would love to see a TV series adaptation of it. I don't think I would like to see it as a movie though. I don't think a movie would be able to do it justice in the way that it deserves to, but I also don't want it to be like a super long running TV show. Like, having Netflix pick it up and just having it be like a limited one season and we're done series would be perfect. Make it like kind of 1408 style psychological thriller meets like fun, lighthearted teen comedy romance. Would be perfect. Definitely want to see it happen. Would offer to write the screenplay myself, quite frankly, because too, I think, I don't know, like, I feel like I just loved the story. I feel like I got it. I feel like I could do great things with it if I had a little bit more capabilities as a filmmaker, but alas, I do not have the budget or resources at the time. Otherwise, I would absolutely offer to produce something myself. But I definitely very highly recommend this book to anybody who seems to be a little bit interested at all. I know I wasn't able to give too terribly many details as to the actual storyline itself. Like, what I explained was definitely like bare bones, like minimum first couple of chapters. Like, I would love to go into a lot more detail. And you know what? In fact, I do think I am going to go into a little bit more detail. So from here to wherever the video chapter says it's going to end, this is like, a spoiler warning is in place because we're going to be talking about the book and especially like the ending and some of the psychological twists. So go ahead and mute the video for a little bit if you don't want to be spoiled, but if you don't care or if you've already read the book, stick around. Cause what the actual fuck was that? He was dead the whole time? Like, y'all just fucking Bruce Willis in The Sixth Sense us. Which I didn't actually put those two together until I was actively saying it, and I was like, oh yeah, they Bruce Willis'd us. He was fucking dead the whole time, and I am so fucking upset about it. And like, yeah, they made it wholesome, and it was cute, and they gave him his like resolution, and he was able to like pass over like he needed to, and they figured shit out. But he was fucking dead the whole time. And then she didn't remember any of it. She went back to her body from when she overdosed, and she just didn't remember him. I am devastated. It literally went from them saying they loved each other to her not remembering him at all. Awful. I am so sad about it. Like, definitely devastated about how the events turned out, but also don't think I would have been satisfied with any other resolution or ending as well. With the exception of maybe I think it was an epilogue, or it was just the last chapter. No, I'm pretty sure it was an epilogue, where they had Amy as an old woman now, and she kind of like zones out and has a vision and sees presumably Ryan, and it mentions her having like these daydreams like throughout her life. That was almost like satisfying but equally unsatisfying, because it's like, okay, you know, she definitely has these like flashbacks and memories of something, but she still has no idea who he is. Like, there was no recognition or anything like that. And like, I kind of wanted it to have a little bit of a Titanic moment where like, and again, I realize now I had the thought in my brain, but it wasn't until I said it out loud to where I was like, oh, right, Titanic already did that. So if they were to do it here, it would have just seemed like a ripoff. But like, I really wanted them to have her like, sorry, if they're going to feature her in the epilogue as an old woman, I want her to die. Sorry. I would have loved for her to have died, but then she like appears as her younger self and like meets up with Ryan and they're able to like chill in the afterlife. Would have been super cute. But like I said, did not put two and two together that that's literally the ending of Titanic. I almost said Twilight. That would have been worse. So I understand why they weren't able to do that, but I'm still a little bit disappointed. I just, like I said, I was a little bit unsatisfied, but I also don't think anything would have been more satisfying. Like, this was probably the only way that they were able to wrap it up and finish it to where I'm like, all right, that's fair, you know? But yeah, what the fuck? I'm so mad about it, and yet so just satisfied. I definitely cried way more than I should have. It was very, very sad at certain points. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I had a blast hanging out with y'all. Peace.